spent a lot of time reading about Darfur. Have you been there?
No, nobody went to Darfur.
So there was an embargo about anybody going in there. So you gathered evidence from external evidence.
Yeah, we decided early on, the prosecutor made the decision, because again, it was happening while we were investigating, that we could not safely investigate in Darfur. Under the Rome Statute, we have an obligation. The prosecutor's office has an obligation to protect witnesses and victims. And it was so insecure there that we felt we could not adequately protect staff, but more importantly, we couldn't adequately protect the people we were going to see. And so we collected evidence for the first arrest warrants in 17 countries, including the Sudan, but not Darfur, but then from outside, and mainly Chad, where there are a lot of refugee camps.
What'd you learn?
I think the thing that all people who enter this field learn is that it's incredibly difficult. You don't have, you know, it's still a baby system. It's a nascent system. And so the amount of frustration and challenges that you feel on a daily basis are really mind-boggling. And it ranges from flying into places in helicopters and having to stay safe while you're sleeping to meeting with victims who never thought they would have a chance to tell their stories and the pressure of that. But then there's the fact that you can't really arrest people. I worked at the court for 3.5 years, and nobody that I indicted or charged was arrested in the time that I was there. So, you know, that's tomorrow's challenge. It's always very slow. Mladic is still at large. Karadzic has been arrested after, what, 14 years? So that number needs to come down if we're going to make this a more fearsome system, which the system that we want it to be.
Obviously, there are arrest warrants for a few folks in Sudan, and there hasn't been the political will to really go in and arrest them. Do you suspect that's going to change over, say, the next 5 years?
I think it's already changing a lot. And I think one thing that gives you hope, even though there are a lot of obstacles, and especially with the ICC, people sort of forget that there's compliance that comes without enforcement. So the countries who join the ICC are obligated to conform their domestic statutes with the Rome Statute. So you have 109 member countries now, which is a staggering number for a human rights treaty. And these countries are systematically changing their laws to outlaw the same crimes that the Rome Statute outlaws. And there's more enforcement at the domestic level. There are countries now in Kenya and Colombia which are not open investigations of the ICC, but there are very clear threats the ICC will become involved, and that is clearly affecting the politics, the behavior on the ground. So, you know, there's a lot of sort of passive compliance. It's not really passive, but compliance without bringing cases. It doesn't relieve the obligation to bring cases. You need to have that as the final threat. But I think that on the more hopeful side of the ledger, you see a lot of conforming to a norm, conforming to the rule of law.
You brought up Nuremberg. What does a Robert H. Jackson mean to a Christine Chung?
Oh, I think he means a tremendous amount, because he's, even today, so many years later, he is what you imagine yourself being when you're a trial lawyer or a trial attorney at one of these tribunals. Is you always, and since Robert Jackson, yes, David Crane did it. You can watch videotape of David Crane. You know, you can see each of the prosecutors has had their chance to make their mark on the first trials of their tribunals and the most important trials of their tribunals. So, yeah, Robert Jackson started a dream that I think is alive in many prosecutors' hearts. You also look back, though, and you think it's never going to be as easy as that, which sounds crazy, because at the time they did it, it was the most impressive undertaking ever. But even today at the conference, you heard people talking about, well, I didn't have trainloads of evidence. You know, now the knock on Nuremberg is, well, you were the winning party, you had access to all of the territory, you could basically charge anybody with whatever you wanted, and you did. And now, I think it's actually a good part of international justice. There are more norms, and you have to play within more boundaries as a prosecutor. And the field is standardizing a little bit, and so it's not a frontier in that way anymore. It's still young, but it's not. You're not at that edge where you can kind of do what you want to do and have all this great evidence and be able to put on the case that you want to put on. It's a little more challenging now. In the U.S., we have the most, certainly when I was away in The Hague, what I came to appreciate is that in the U.S. we have the most sophisticated system, legal system, judicial system. The fact that people sue each other for money, sometimes in this system, and that litigants abide by the results. When you work in this international field, you find that concept crazy. There are days when you're in the field thinking where there's no law and there hasn't been law for decades, and you think to yourself, my God, at home, men and women wear robes, people bring their problems to them, and when the problem is adjudicated, everybody lives by the result. They pay people, they agree to do certain things, they agree to stop doing certain things. And that form of law, when you have a society that has that highly developed a legal system, it's really, you know, it is a privilege. It's an amazing privilege, and I think that Americans really take it for granted.
Is what some of the things you were involved in with Paco and Pamela, was that part of the education process? Is that why Ocampo bought into letting that happen? Yeah,
and you know, it was not, we were very skeptical of Pam and Paco when they first came and started filming. Right. I mean, Pam and Paco will tell you that the first time they came into my office, I was like, get lost, I don't have time for you guys. We had so much going on, and we had no reason to believe that they were more trustworthy than other filmmakers. And they were making really kind of naive requests, like, we want to go on mission with you, we want to watch you interview witnesses, and we were all kind of like, you know, this is not going to work. And then ultimately what you realize is you have a new court that not only people know nothing about, but if they do know something, it's something wrong.
It's a negative.
It's a negative. So you have to choose your places where you're going to let people in and let them see what you're doing to dispel misimpressions. And once it was established to us rather quickly, because Pam and Paco are Pam and Paco, that they were trustworthy, then it became a 3-year project. And watching the movie, I've seen the movie get shown now, this is The Reckoning, get shown now to probably 10 or 15 audiences. And it is an amazing way to get the word of the court out. I mean, you just have put in a package, in a compelling package, here's what the court really does. And people leave that movie wanting to know more. I've seen it happen time and time again. And so, yeah, nothing, it's the whole tree falls in a forest problem. I mean, I worked in The Hague for 3.5 years, and I can tell people about what we did in the Uganda case, and I can explain what's happening in the Darfur case. But when people are watching the footage of the Security Council meeting and it's dawning on them, this ICC thing is real. Here are the most powerful countries in the world discussing what to do about Darfur and the ICC. Or they're watching victims in Uganda talk about how their village was overrun by the Lord's Resistance Army and how it's affecting their children and their lives. Yeah. I mean, that's something I can't do as a prosecutor. It's something that no trial could do.
Very, very powerful.